Hello, everybody, and welcome to this, the latest edition of Chin Stroker versus Punter. I'm Mike here in Wellington, New Zealand, and with me, as always, is Paul in Birmingham, England. How the heck are you today, sir?
I'm a little bit chilly, but other than that, fine.
Well, you know, it's been a long road getting from there to here.
It's been a long road.
There being our last recording in, I think, December 2025, and we are now in April 2026. I think it might be the longest
gap.
I think it's the biggest gap that we've had, but no, we are not gone. We have not pod faded. Although I don't know, I think pod faded means you don't return. I think that's the implication, is that it's gradual, but you don't return. I mean, we may yet pod fade, but it has not happened yet. So just saying, we're aiming for that 20 years of podcasting. We're not too far off. But before we get into
just noticing how the camera is making my hair look really grey.
I was thinking that. I was like, God, it's been a rough 4 months, Paul. Although I'll be honest, I think
my hair doesn't look that grey. I think it's because the light is directly above me.
Yeah,
that's what I'm sticking with.
It looks kind of cool. You've got a kind of season 1 ER Clooney, or in your case, it's the. Was that the porno? The porno ER is but yeah. So Paul, how the devil are you, sir? It's been a while.
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right.
Glad to hear it. Still alive. You haven't. We haven't had the Citizen Kane snow globe rolling out of your hand, smashing on the floor.
Not yet. Not yet. No, Rosebud.
Death in front of the television. I'm just thinking, what would be the worst TV show to die to?
Probably something like Paw Patrol.
No, I'm just thinking. I mean, it would be. Gosh, yeah. I mean, just something mediocre. You know, like one of the lesser CSIs or something. You know, you'd be like, "Oh, great! This is how I'm going." You know. I always remember that. Do you remember the documentary? Is it Enter the Void or Into the Void? The mountain climbing documentary about the guy surviving on the cliff. I remember he talked about how when he was malnourished and he was dying and he hadn't had any water, he was dehydrated. He went into this kind of fever, and apparently it's really common when people are dying or in extreme duress to get a song stuck in their head and for it to manically go round, almost like a kind of haunting mantra. And he had "Brown Girl in the Ring" by Brotherhood of Man stuck in his head. And I remember him saying, like, and then I was lying there thinking, I'm going to die to Brotherhood of Man. And he said that thought alone inspired him to fight on.
You just remember, I was watching videos of parents picking up their teenage kids from school, playing, and I mean blasting, the most embarrassing music they could think of while they're picking them up.
Wow.
And then when the kids run off, they just really slowly crawl after them, singing along with all the windows down. Some kids have just jumped through the window head first, and they're like ducking down, going, "Just drive, drive."
It's like when I'm driving, because I find that when you're driving, it's one of the few opportunities you get in life to sing loud. Because I'll have the radio on. Because you're on your own, no one can hear you, and I'll never forget.
Yeah, but you do look batshit crazy to everybody else.
Like, whoa! If you're a sort of gesticulating kind of singer as well. But no, I remember I was in a work car. I had a job where I did a lot of driving, and it was a fleet car, and I didn't realise that my windows went down, and I was singing at absolute full volume to "I Want to Dance with Somebody" by Whitney Houston. And that's one of the ones that springs to mind. But anyway, no, I'm sure we've got plenty of what we've been watching to get through, as it's been absolute months. So before we get on to that,
I think you'd be shocked how little I have.
Okay, well, let's see.
There was 2 months of Winter Olympics, in fairness. That was like 12 hours a day for weeks upon weeks. It was excellent.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll see how we go. Well, I'll tell you what, shall I start then? Because I've got insane amounts. And what I'm probably going to do, I always say this and then end up just rattling on for ages about each individual one, but I'm going to try and blast through a lot because I really want to kind of clear the deck. So these will be quite post-it note reviews. First thing I want to mention is I watched all of season 1 of Star Trek Starfleet Academy.
Oh my God, mate.
This is the.
How did you make it? How did you make it through the whole season?
This is the latest Star Trek series from Secret Hideout, and it's really interesting. Star Trek's in a really fascinating place at the moment because, I mean, I don't know how much you've been following all the stuff that's been happening with Paramount, but they've been purchased, so there's a new regime there, so everything's in flux.
Instantly, that deal instantly put that company $79 billion in debt.
Yes, and also the other thing that's happening that's affecting Star Trek as well is that we're very much now at the end of the streaming bubble bursting. You know, there was a gold fever period. I mean, if you think about how there was a point where CBS All Access, or Paramount Plus as it became, had 5 Star Trek shows in production at once, and there are currently now, for the first time since 2016, I think, no Star Trek shows in production at all. There's no cameras rolling on Star Trek anywhere.
I think they've tried lots of different things with Star Trek in this modern era. Different styles, different casts, different approaches.
Well, what they've done though is, and it's worth mentioning that.
But I don't think that they've. I think they must have been hoping that they'd land on one or two that would carry them forward. Now, I don't think that's happened.
I think the closest that they've come to that is actually, before continuing this conversation, it's worth mentioning there is more Star Trek to come. There's still two seasons of Strange New Worlds that were shot back to back that they've got in the can, and there is another season of Starfleet Academy that's been filmed that's coming out later this year. So there's still more to come.
Are they not? Is that the last one?
Yes, they shot it. They shot 2 seasons, and both seasons were shot before it aired though, and it didn't do very well. So that they basically, we say 2 seasons, but that's 20 episodes in the streaming age. So there is more to come, and I think Strange New Worlds is probably the closest to that. That did do well. That actually made it onto the Nielsen's, which is rare for streaming shows. So it was kind of getting network TV numbers on a streaming platform, which shows that it was doing quite well.
I think we all secretly know that the Orville has been the best.
And there's a new season of that coming as well. So that's the irony, is that there's a season 4 of the Orville coming later this year. So the Orville's actually outlasted those Star Treks. But what I think the other thing that happened that was interesting with Star Trek is, so there were 5 shows in production at one point, and it was a similar thing with Star Wars. There were loads of Star Wars shows, and the approach that a lot of franchises were taking, Marvel, Star Wars and Star Trek being the most obvious ones, during the height of streaming when they were throwing billions and billions of dollars at it, was, let's make a show for everyone. Let's make a kid's Star Trek. Let's make a young adult Star Trek, which is what Starfleet Academy is supposed to be. That's meant to appeal to your Hunger Games, Twilight sort of audience, or your kind of WB kind of fans. You've got a kid's show, you've got the adult comedy one, you've got Picard for the older fans. But that's fine if you've got 5 or 6 shows on the air. But what the thing that really hurt Starfleet Academy was that Starfleet Academy was built up during this model of a Star Trek show for everyone. But then the streaming bubble burst. Paramount was acquired. Everything was put on hold. So
suddenly, not everyone's getting a Star Trek.
So suddenly, it's like Starfleet Academy is the only show, and it was never designed to be the only show.
Yeah.
So there was that. I'm going to say I freaking loved Starfleet Academy. I thought it was absolutely tremendous. I watched the first episode and was like, I don't know about this, because it's a really weird show. In some ways, it's like Lower Decks, because you've got all the young adult stuff, the Starfleet Academy stuff, the kind of teen romance, nobody understands me, my dad hates me kind of WB nonsense. And that's fairly well played as far as it is, but that's what it is. It's like Smallville or, one of those shows, or the OC. But I was surprised by how it's a 50-50 split between that and the command crew, the Holly Hunter, Paul Giamatti, all that kind of stuff. And I was also surprised by how seriously and intensely it plays it. It's got a really big budget, which is probably one of the reasons why it was cancelled. And it's really high stakes. I wasn't expecting that. And the first couple of episodes are interesting because it sets up the story arc in the first episode. But I think the thing that killed this show for a lot of people was the second episode. The second episode really leans in to the young adult. And the show was designed to try and bring new viewers in, because there was this feeling that the youngest Star Trek fans are our generation. So basically the fan base is going to start dying soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand all that. the reason it's been cancelled isn't because it's expensive. It's because nobody wanted
Nobody's
to watch
watching.
it.
Well, also it was.
You're in a tiny minority of people that like this show. I've come to
I
realise.
I read somewhere
I'm
that
going to be honest. I watched half an hour of the first episode and turned it off.
yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough. You know,
I think I don't really particularly like the fact that it just changes some really big things from a Star Trek from the universe building that has come before it.
well, it's set 1,000 years later, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yes, I know, but I mean, still, representation of some of the races just it was weird, man. In fact, most of the crew were weird, apart from, I mean, Robert Picardo notwithstanding, even he could not save that show. I thought it was almost terribly written and unwatchable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I strongly disagree, and I genuinely don't know how you got that from the first half hour. But to each their own, man. To each their own. And I can say, and this show has been a polarizing show. And in full disclosure, I read somewhere that apparently it had an average of 40,000 viewers per episode. I mean,
That's not enough for a show that must. I mean, this show definitely looks like it was very expensive.
There are Star Trek YouTube channels that get way more viewers than that. You know.
Was that? Did I see somebody did a YouTube channel with a doll of Mr. Spock that got more viewers?
Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I really like this show. I think it was really good.
That's a bit cruel.
And there is a fan base out there for it, a small fan base. But I think that that it's really well made, really well acted, really well written, really tense, really great Star Trek. I think it was some of the best Star Trek we've seen during the Kurtzman era. But at the same time, I totally get that it's not for everyone. It's a very particular style. It was designed to bring young adults in. But the show really kind of moves away from that. But at the same time, they shot themselves in the foot because that was how they sold it. They sold this as, you know, this isn't your dad's Star Trek. This is like a young, hip kind of. And it turned a lot of people off because young adults don't want to watch Star Trek. And Star Trek fans don't want to watch young adult stuff. So I think it was just a failure of marketing. But I think that if they'd marketed the show accurately enough, I think if they'd have dropped it all in one go, I think that if people had been able to binge it and been able to kind of really get it, because you don't really get the vibe of what the show is until you're 2 or 3 episodes in. But if you've already made your mind up about it and the marketing doesn't help, the whole woke thing didn't help it too much as well. You know, there's a gay Klingon in it and people were like, oh gosh.
God.
Yeah.
Because you get the extremes from both sides of the argument, really, and not doing
you've almost got to just completely tune that out. But I do think that the show was a combination of a failure of marketing and the show should never have been made when it was the only Star Trek show on the air. Because
I mean, the other thing that weirded me out was, you know, Gina Yashere, she plays the weirdly female Dominion.
Yeah, well, she's a Klingon. She's half Klingon, half Jem'Hadar.
Yeah, that's it, Jem'Hadar. Because I've seen her do stand up, and I used to watch her quite a lot on Mock the Week as well. That weirded me out as well.
Yeah, and she's a comedic character as well.
She's just doing her own voice as well.
Yeah.
And she's quite like North London, sort of. That weirded me out too. I mean, not a reason to dislike the show, granted.
But a barrier for you. No, and the thing is, and you know, there's a reason why the show didn't succeed, but I think it was really awesome, and I was really surprised. Like it was a duty watch. Like I watched the first episode with Hannah, and we were both like, "All right, okay, well, we'll give it another one." And then we watched the next one, and I thought, you know what, I'm probably going to tap out of this. But then I listened to a Star Trek podcast, and I was hearing a lot of really positive stuff about the 3rd and 4th episode, and then the story arc kicks in. And I was really invested, and it does some great visuals, some great sci-fi action adventure. I started to really like the characters. The characters that were annoying at the beginning, you kind of, were annoying for a reason, and the show explores that in a way that's dramatically satisfying and makes sense. And I really enjoyed it. And I do hope that in a few years' time, people will come back to it when the dust has settled a little bit. But I totally get the issue is the fact that when you're the only Star Trek show in production, you're kind of having to be the franchise. Whereas if there was like Lower Decks was still on the air, Picard was still on the air, all of these other shows were still going, you could have a look at Strange New Worlds and go, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'll move on to the next thing. But when it's the only thing on the air, then it becomes this big story, and then it becomes this big culture war like everything else does. And then the woke thick conversation comes into it, regardless of whether that's the reason you like or dislike the show.
I didn't think I'd ever hear Star Trek and too woke in the same sentence.
Because Star Trek.
But saying that, Star Trek have always been. I mean, they were like first interracial kiss.
Yeah, Star Trek. People to disparagingly call Star Trek woke is absurd. You know, it's of course it is. That's what it was designed to be.
Kind of the premise, yeah.
You know, it's like it was. It's kind of ridiculous. But what I will say is that I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to season 2. Although I believe season 2 does end on a cliffhanger, because I think that they did. I think they were worried. I think that they suspected.
Well, I think we know how that cliffhanger ends.
I think that they. Yeah, not well. I think that they suspected that. That they were going to struggle to come back, and that maybe they thought that they could leverage out at least, you know, a TV movie or something like that. But
you never know. These things, once it's all on a streaming service, they tend to find a little bit more of an audience.
Well, that's the other thing is apparently what Paramount are going to start doing as well is they're not going to start having exclusive rights on their shows on their own streaming. They're only going to have the latest season. So what you'll see a lot of their shows like Yellowstone, and Star Trek, they'll all start popping back up on Netflix, like the new shows, you know, Picard and Strange New Worlds and Prodigy and Lower Decks and all of those shows. And I think that will help. I mean, it won't help this show because it'll be too little too late. But I do think that with Star Trek, I think what they really need to do is concentrate on the heart of the franchise. And my suspicion is what's going to happen with Star Trek is it's going to go back to films for a short while. I think that the next Star Trek we see after what's already been filmed in Canada this last year, I think will be a movie. I think that's the next thing we're going to see. And that's a new creative team. You know, Bad Robot don't have Star Trek anymore. It's the two guys who did... Have you seen the Chris Pine Dungeons and Dragons film?
Yes, that was good, that was.
Yeah, they're the guys who are now running the Star Trek movie franchise.
I've read somewhere, I don't know whether it's accurate, that Kurtzman might be gone as well.
Well, his contract is up, and they aren't developing any new shows at the moment. So my suspicion is the Secret Hideout, which is his company, his production company. I think they'll be gone. But at the same time, you know, the narrative is always getting fired. He's not. It's like
I don't think he is.
He's not. They've done very well.
Ages.
I mean, he brought Star Trek back to television. They had multiple shows. Some were liked more than others. That was always going to be the case. But I would say that the only one really commercially that was an outright disaster was Starfleet Academy. And I think a big part of that was that they were already winding down the current Star Trek production. And I think that Paramount just thought, you know what, there's no point in sinking loads of money into promoting this show when we kind of know we're probably not going to bring it back. And we also know that even...
It did look like they'd spent a lot of money on it.
Yeah, but when they made the show, that was before the streaming bubble really burst. That was early enough that they'd already committed to that. And another reason why a lot of people didn't like Starfleet Academy is that that's the show that they decided to make instead of Legacy, the continuation of Picard. So a lot of people held that there. But the big rumour now is that the one show that's getting a lot of traction that I think is probably going to be the first of the new Star Trek shows is that Star Trek United, which is the West Wing style Star Trek starring Scott Bakula. Where the idea is that he's like the president of the Federation. It's Archer when he's much older, but it's going to be more of a kind of political intrigue,
that could be quite cool.
White House, and he's got like a special ops unit that does stuff, and that's been run by I can't remember the guy's name. He was a writer. Mike Sussman, I think, is meant to be the showrunner on that one. So that could be an interesting way to go, and I think that would be very much targeting an adult audience, which I think is probably the way they need to go with Star. I mean, Star Trek.
Do you think there's not a young audience to be had for Star Trek then?
I do, but I think that you make really good adult Star Trek, and that will attract a younger audience as well.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to break everything up. But if you think about it, back in the day with like Star Wars and stuff, everybody watched Star Wars. You didn't have to make a Star Wars for kids and a Star Wars for adults, and
No.
you just did a really good job of making something that appealed to everyone. And that's hard to do, and that's why people take the easy option and say, right, okay, let's do Andor for the adults. Let's do Clone Wars for the kids. Because it's bloody hard to make something that's going to hit across all of those quadrants, you know. But no, I really like Starfleet Academy, and I think it's a shame that they didn't at least. I really hope that they maybe just throw them a couple of $100,000 just to film a couple of extra bumper scenes to whack on the end. But I've heard, from what I've heard, they've actually disassembled. I think they've actually disassembled the sets in Canada now. So I think
disassemble.
Yeah, so I think Johnny Five. No, I think that's extremely unlikely. Okay, what have you been watching, Paul?
I watched 1992's Shin Kamen Rider Prologue.
Okay,
which was made excuse me for the 20th anniversary of the 70's Shin Kamen Rider live action series, and I believe the animation probably predates that. But do you know anything about
I have never heard of it in my life.
Okay, Kim, it's like a tokusatsu superhero sort of thing, like like Power Rangers basically, but it's one guy on a motorbike, and he has these
okay, no, hang on, this is ringing a bell. I think I've seen imagery from this,
and he's got kind of like an insect-like helmet that he wears, which I think is where the Kamen, because the Kamen bit is the bug part.
Yeah, no, I am familiar with this. I just didn't know it by name.
But this is a kind of a reimagining, and it's much more of I mean, I wasn't expecting it at all, but it's more of a body horror.
Really?
Yeah, he doesn't get superpowers and get a suit. He actually goes through a physical metamorphosis where the insect part bursts through the human part and rips the skin off, and then unexplainedly he has all his skin back when he changes back to his normal dude part. And also, what I wasn't expecting is just how much blood there is to show how strong these characters are. When he punches someone, they just explode in a cloud of blood.
Nice.
Basically, I mean, the stuff's everywhere.
How do they reconcile the kind of the kiddified nature of just the general conceit of it with the violence? Are they just assuming that this is aimed at people who grew up watching it, and this is like the adult version for them? Or
well, from what I can tell, I mean, obviously I think that the Japanese anime scene tends to treat its Japanese audience like adults.
Right.
It's not a kid's medium, as it were. And even that, but saying that, there are plenty of things directed at kids that are quite violent as well. Stuff that that'd never make it into your sort of Western Saturday morning cartoon. And as far as I know, the animated the animated Kamen Rider and the live action TV show were both quite violent as well. I mean, I don't know whether they would quite take it to the level that this does.
Well, it's like the original Japanese version of Battle of the Planets. You know, that had to be sanitized and have kind of.
Oh yeah, I mean there was genocide and millions dying and whole cities getting destroyed, and I mean it was cut like it took place on Earth in the Western version.
Well, they added those like Seven's Arc 7 and Center Neptune, didn't they? And all of those Star Wars influenced kind of bumpers that were never part of the original anime.
They did. I mean, considering how much they chopped up and butchered those originals, it was actually Battle of the Planets was still.
Oh, mate, we loved that. Gen Xers, you know, tea time, jumpers for goalposts. It was one of those.
It was one of. It was
that and Ulysses, and you know, Cities of Gold.
Best theme tune ever, Ulysses.
Yeah. It's, I'll tell you what,
And
if it, 80s TV
Jason
karaoke.
the Wheeled Warriors.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
Yeah, big time. I'll tell you what, when we get back to my choices, you're going to see you're going to get some serious nostalgia hits, I'm telling you.
So anyway, yeah, this is like a superhero horror film, and I quite enjoyed it. It's a 6.5, 7 out of 10. It hasn't got a massive budget or anything, but as we all know, Japanese filmmakers seem to be able to do much more with much less than the Western sort of filmmakers manage. And this was really entertaining. There's a whole sort of subplot about this evil corporation that's using different mutant insect DNA and splicing it with people, and that's the explanation as to how he gets his powers. And there's lots of other different people based on different other insects in it, and they're all sort of fairly grotesque in the way they transform. But it was a fun kind of surprisingly light-hearted in places, surprisingly melodramatic in other places, and very gory.
Nice.
But it was quite entertaining.
What more could you want? Okay, I'm just gonna blast through a bit of TV stuff. I'm gonna mention I'm on what's it called? What's the app? Oh yes. So I'm on a new app called Serialized with a Z, and basically it's the letterboxed for television. You log TV episodes that you're watching. I'm just doing it purely because I wanted to remember things for this. And I've been watching a lot of very nostalgic TV recently. And this is no surprise to me because I've recently moved house and recently started a new job. And I find psychologically, whenever I have lots of big changes in my life, I always retreat to a lot of nostalgic TV watching. It's a kind of, I guess, it's just a sort of mental health thing. I reckon. Familiarity, exactly. And so I've been watching the 1970s Planet of the Apes live action TV series. I've been watching Charlie's Angels, the original series. I've been watching The Fall Guy. And I've been watching The Rockford Files. These are shows on.
What can you watch the Fall Guy on?
Oh, I can watch it on the internet, mate. Let's put it that way. So I'll cover off a couple of these. First of all, the one that's the biggest surprise for me, because I've never really watched it. I remember it a lot. I remember it being on, and I remember things like the annual. Do you remember when annuals were a thing?
Yes,
back in the day,
I got a Beano annual this Christmas. Gone.
No, so do I. I get a Beano annual every couple of years, and for those who don't know, because I don't think they have these in America, they're kind of like A4 sized hardback books, and they are sometimes compilations. They're often based on films and TV shows, and they'll have like short stories, little comic books, crosswords. They're just these kind of activity entertainment books based on franchises. And they were a big thing in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but they still go in some capacity now. And it was always a big thing in this is serious jumpers for goalposts stuff here, but if you go to a fair or a fete or a carnival in England, particularly when I was a kid, this might still be the case, you'd always find old annuals. So I've got loads of them at home, even for shows that were before my time. Like I've got like the 1971 Man from U.N.C.L.E. Annual, and stuff like that, and Battlestar Galactica and $6 Million Man and all those kind of things. And I had the annual for this, and like I say, yeah. So this is the Planet of the Apes show from the 1970s. And the fun thing about this show is, do you remember when it was a thing in TV shows where you'd always have two male leads, and one of them would have blonde hair and one of them would have black hair? That was just a thing. You think about everything.
Butch and Sundance started.
Yeah, it is. Starsky and Hutch, Bo and Luke Duke. It was just, there were loads of them. Chips, the TV show, not the food stuff.
Luke and Han.
Yeah. It was always a thing, and this is a classic kind of blonde. And the blonde hair guy was usually the serious, heroic one, and the dark-haired one was always the slightly wisecracky kind of one as well. It was always that sort of dynamic, and this show's the same. But I've been really surprised by this because, and this is damning with faint praise a little bit, but I love the original Planet of the Apes films, but they're definitely a case of the law of diminishing returns. You can see that they spent less and less money on them, but for the most part, they continue to do really interesting things with those films. You know, you had the third one, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, where the apes went back to our time, and it was like a reversal of the original Planet of the Apes film. You had the one where you first saw the apes rise up, and it was very much an allegory for things like the Watts riots in inner city America. And there was a lot of that kind of interesting stuff. And this show, the production value is probably as good as some of those later Planet of the Apes films are the original ones. Again, damning with faint praise, but still not terrible. Like, they obviously used the same masks, the same sets. They were repurposing a lot of the same stuff. A lot of the imagery that has come to be known as part of Planet of the Apes actually comes from the TV show. Like, the opening credits has got a very famous shot of an ape sat on the back of a horse holding its gun up like a kind of Che Guevara kind of figure. Like, that's imagery from the TV series as well. It feels very much like, almost like what Star Trek would have been like if they'd done a Star Trek show in the 70's. You know, it's very much like they'll encounter a village of people and help them. And Urko, the main villain ape, is played by Mark Leonard, who played Sarek in Star Trek as well. And DC Fontana, and a bunch of Star Trek people work on this show. The other TV show, one of the other TV shows I've been watching as well, which I only vaguely remember being on television, is the TV series version of Logan's Run that was done straight after the film. And that also has DC Fontana writing for it. It's fun.
I quite like the film, though.
Yeah, I mean,
like the film.
I mean, the series is very much like, you know, the Gil Gerard, Buck Rogers, you know, tweaky, bitty disco dancing kind of sexy ladies on the opening credits kind of thing. But the other thing that this show does that was another mainstay of 70s and 80s TV was the lead characters having somebody pursuing them, and meaning that they've got to keep moving and then help out a different group of kindly farmers or whatever the next week. Like, do you remember in the Incredible Hulk TV series, Mr. McGee, who was always chasing, the reporter who was always chasing him? And obviously in the A-Team, you've got Colonel Decker and all that. It was very much and on Logan's Run, of course, the whole conceit of the show is that they're being pursued as well. So it's really interesting going back and watching some of these lesser known genre shows from the early to mid 70s and seeing all of these things that they've got in common. The other thing that 1970s shows loved was small kind of land tank type vehicles as well. Like, you remember Damnation Alley, that film with George Peppard and Jan Michael Vincent? Yeah. And on Battlestar Galactica, they had the Landrams, which were like these kind of like, they're on like sort of tracks, and Logan's Run's got that. Loads of these shows have just got all of these things in common, and you can really see the commonalities. But it's fun.
It's like the Bond movies always, whenever they got to the bad guy's base, they'd always have like those kind of golf buggy type things to drive around the base in.
They had a great buggy budget, didn't they, those supervillains?
A buggy budget,
you know, and
a budget.
A budget, if you will. But the thing that's really interesting about a lot of these shows is because they're before Star Wars, like or they're based on franchises that were before Star Wars. So it's still very much in that pre-Star Wars dystopia sci-fi. You know, like in Planet of the Apes, things are really grim. You know, humans are like these slave races, and they're being hunted, and they're you know, you've got these subjugated villains, and it feels a lot like a Western as well. You know, like you've got the classic thing in the Western of the kind of the greedy land baron, and the hero rolls into town and kind of helps out the villagers and teaches them to defend themselves, you know, like the kind of the Magnificent Seven, or, you know, the Last Samurai, those kind of things. And they're really entertaining. The Fall Guy is really interesting as well, because I mean, obviously that came on the back of the fascination with stunt work, but it's really entertaining. And it's funny as well, because I've also been watching the $6 Million Man, the original one, because the $6 Million Man is much more serious, whereas the Fall Guy has a real sense of humor about it. It feels very much influenced, the Fall Guy, by Smokey and the Bandit and the Hal Needham films.
I definitely preferred the Fall Guy.
Yeah, well, the thing that's interesting about the $6 Million Man is it does what a lot of those 70s TV shows do, where it kind of reinvents its premise a little bit. Like the thing with $6 Million Man that's interesting is it actually starts with 3 feature-length TV movies. So it started with the $6 Million Man, which was the origin storyline. And it's really different. There's no Oscar Goldman, you know. The guy who's helping him is played by Darren McGavin from Kolchak Night Stalker. And the government are very much a shady X-Files government in that. And then the network, it did very well, but they weren't quite sure if it could work as a series, so they did 2 more TV movies, and those 2 TV movies that followed the first one, it's basically James Bond. Like it's very much he's a spy, and then he's going and just the episodes will start with these kind of James Bond little mini adventures of him kind of, popping out the water with a snorkel and going and infiltrating and kind of have the earpiece in and being mobilized, like a kind of special ops kind of thing. And then by the time you get to the TV series, it's very much for traditional, he's just going and helping people and, that kind of classic thing. But it's very serious and very straight faced and very kind of Michael Crichton kind of style.
I always remember it as a series that did a lot with very little.
It is. I think the things that people remember the most about the $6 Million Man are where that, but also when remember when he fought Bigfoot. That was a big deal at the time.
No, I don't remember that.
I was going to say that was probably before your time, because I remember I was very young. One of my earliest memories, pop culture
only
memories.
A couple of years.
No, I know, but if this was like when I was 4.
Yeah, I would have seen this stuff in the 80s.
In reruns.
Yeah.
But people forget, and actually, this is something that Planet of the Apes and $6 Million Man have in common, is people forget how big they were. Certainly from a merchandising perspective, like both of them were very much laying the foundation for Star Wars. The $6 Million Man action figures were a huge deal. I mean, I remember
You could look through the back of his head, and it had like a little microscope.
And his arm had this sort of skin-coloured kind of prophylactic style thing that you peel back.
Peeled it back, and all the wires and stuff were in there.
And there was like an evil robot one that you could take, Oscar Goldman, that you could take the face off, and it had all the stuff. And there was, but with Planet of the Apes as well, there was a huge amount of toys for Planet of the Apes, certainly in America.
I didn't have toys, but I definitely had Planet of the Apes T-shirts.
Yeah, go
probably
Ape.
Planet of the Apes pajamas as well.
But what I would say is, out of all of these shows, and I watched the pilot of Charlie's Angels it's Charlie's Angels is exactly what you remember it being. It's kind of ridiculous. But out of all of these shows that I've rewatched, the 2 that have, I don't want to say surprised me the most, because one of them wasn't that much of a surprise, but the 2 that have definitely been the best are the Rockford Files, because the Rockford Files is just a genuinely good show.
Yeah,
it's a very early Stephen Cannell show, so it's got the great Mike Post theme. It's got the gold Thunderbird, the Trans Am, the Pontiac. You've got the cool. He lives in a trailer on the beach. It's this stuff that this whole lifestyle that this kind of gumshoe. It's like a character out of a Tom Waits song or something almost. And it's got
Lethal Weapon totally ripped it off.
It did. And it's got this kind of grimy 70s kind of neon city kind of thing going on as well. But you've got James Garner, who's just one of the most charismatic performers there is, who was kind of slumming it doing TV at times. TV was a bit of a dirty word there, and it's just a great show. And the Planet of the Apes show is just really entertaining. It's basically just a fun little Planet of the Apes movie every week. And it only lasted for one season. I think it's like 14 episodes. And I can see why. There's only so much you can do with that concept, with the moving on to the next place, helping them out. But there's so much fun that you can have with just the world of Planet of the Apes. But it ends up feeling a bit like one of those shows, because they're trying to get away, like Logan's Run or Star Trek Voyager or The Fugitive or Battlestar Galactica, or one of these shows where there's a goal and you kind of know they'll never get the goal, because that means the show would be over. And they'll have episodes that will tease you that they've got the goal, but you know that they haven't, because that's not how television works. So there's a bit of that going on with it, but it is really...
We know whether they're going to rescue Murdoch this week or not.
Yeah, exactly. It's that. So, but no, they're really fun shows. And the Fall Guys really fun because it does shine a light on the work that the stuntmen were doing. And it has that kind of, obviously the big influences for it were films like Hooper. But also he's a bounty hunter as well.
I genuinely just loved that truck when I was a kid.
Oh, same here.
Oh man.
And it's so funny as well. It's another thing that a lot of those TV shows did at the time was that they knew that there was some central thing about the show that people loved, and they would always have it happen twice a show. So the example I always use is the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk. You always knew that he was going to turn into the Hulk twice in the episode, one around the midpoint and one near the end. And it was always going to happen. And you always knew with the Four Guy as well that there'd be two action sequences every episode involving the truck. One in the
truck will definitely get to do a jump.
Exactly. And, and I'd remember, I think even as a kid, I'd be out playing with my friends and be like, oh, it's 1:30. I better get in for like the action sequence, And then it was that kind of predictable. And a lot of shows had things like that, like Airwolf as well. You knew every episode there'd be a big action sequence at the end, and it would end with the music doing that. And then the big explosion would happen at the end. It was so formulaic.
Yeah, I knew in Airwolf every week there'd be a big action sequence, but quite a lot of it would look like stuff they'd robbed from the movie.
Yeah, well, no, that's the other thing as well, is that a lot of these TV shows, like Logan's Run and Planet of the Apes, are great examples of this. Particularly Logan's Run is the amount of stock footage from the film of Logan's Run that they use. Carousel and the dome.
It always used to make me laugh because suddenly it cuts to it does the sort of establishing shot from the film and it cuts to the TV, and I'm thinking the budget dropped quite quickly during this one.
Absolutely. And you'll go from this incredible establishing shot to a couple of dudes in a cornfield. Or one thing that's interesting as well is that because I've been watching a lot of 70s television, what that means is that I've been getting to enjoy a huge amount of an actor called William Smith. Are you familiar with this guy? You might not know him by name. I'll let me just bring up a picture of him. I'll just do a screen share now. Hang on, Zoom.
Is he one of those guys?
Yeah, but he literally every single one of these shows that I've mentioned, he is he's been in. So let me just do a quick screen share. Here we go. Real muscular guy. Do you recognise him?
Yes.
I'll try and think. I need to find one of him looking more sort of muscly because he's that's what he's kind of known for.
No. I definitely remember him.
He was the guy that Clint Eastwood fought in Every Which Way But Loose as well. He is in every single one of these shows. It's kind of insane. And like I watched Charlie's Angels, The Four Guy, and Planet of the Apes and the Rockford Files. I've only watched 2 episodes of each, and he's already been in all 4 of those.
But I suppose if you're not a leading guy, then being typecast as the hood or the gang leader or the main antagonist isn't a bad thing for your average. It's that guy actor.
Yeah, and I think he only died relatively recently. I mean, he was in films. I remember him in films relatively recently. But it's so funny as well. Like the episode of Planet of the Apes that he's in, and this is a classic one that a lot of these shows did. Is there's an episode where it's like a gladiatorial thing where humans are forced to fight, and he's like a gladiator, and he's trying to protect his son because his son's been groomed to be the next fighter, and his son's played by Mark Singer, who played Donovan.
Yeah, Beastmaster.
Beastmaster. But this was early 70s, so he's...
But did they fight to the...
It kind of felt like that. And they had those same kind of weird, vague, crap net weapons. And you know how, like, I love how on 70s TV shows and movies, how easily confused by nets people get. If you throw a net at somebody, they're like, it's like, I don't know, why don't you just gingerly lift the net off yourself?
I was having a conversation about this with someone the other day, that when I was a kid, you always had quicksand in stuff.
Yep.
You always had somebody being chloroformed.
Yep.
And those are 2 things that don't happen in modern films anymore.
Murder by tarantula as well. That was another one as well. I mean, who does that? You think, I know what I'll do. I'll drop a tarantula in the room, and then there's like maybe 100 to 1 chance that the tarantula will take an interest in them and actually kill them. But yeah, it's so funny watching all of these sort of like eras. But the other thing about these shows as well from the early 70s is they're all shot on film. So although they're only 4:3, they're really easy, and they haven't done this in every case, at least the versions that I watched. They're really easy to remaster, unless they edited the optics on video, which this would have been too early for. So a lot of these shows, apart from the fact that they're 4:3, look great. Last of the retro TV shows, I think, that I want to mention briefly as well, that I've also been rewatching, is a lesser known Stephen Cannell show. Because what would happen a lot of the time with these shows in the 80s in England is that they'd start them off in time slots that were designed to appeal to kids. So Saturday afternoons or Friday nights. And if they did well, they'd continue them. If they didn't do well, they'd relegate them to daytime when kids were at school just to fill out the schedule, because there just wasn't a lot of content back then, and that's just fill up TV. So the only time you'd see these shows would be if you were off sick. And one of those shows is a Stephen Cannell show called Hardcastle and McCormick.
I used to watch Hardcastle and McCormick.
Yeah, and it was. This is one of.
It was on just after Scarecrow and Mrs. King on an weekday.
Yeah,
afternoon.
that was another one that is in the afternoon, and there were a few of these. There was Simon and Simon was another one. Crazy Like a Fox, that was another one.
Yes,
There was a whole bunch of these
Crazy
shows.
Like a Fox, bloody hell.
Riptide as well, and a lot of these were shows where, in America. Night Boat. Because in America, there'd be one of these Stephen Cannell shows on every night. And on the other network, there'd be a Glenn Larson show. And on the other network, there'd be an Aaron Spelling or a Donald Belisario show. And they'd all compete with each other. But in the UK, because we had our own programming, you don't want to cancel Bullseye. I mean, let's have some.
Come on!
Yeah. Can have the.
One!
Yeah, that's it. It's like you have to claw the generation game out of my cold, dead hand. I'm not going to give
brought
that up.
back,
Oh, have they? Oh my God! That actually makes me strangely happy. So what they would do?
Vernon Kay is.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, okay. So what they would do is, because these were American shows, they would only really have the cream of the crop. We'd have the A-Team and Airwolf and things like that. But all of those other shows that weren't quite as successful, they just buy them cheap, and they just, like I say, fill out the. But it was silly, because the only people who would want to watch these shows really were kind of 9 to 14-year-old boys, and they were all at school, so it made no sense. And this was very early when video was around, so I remember videoing some of these and watching them. But Hardcastle and McCormick's
the first American hero,
the greatest American hero.
That
was another Cannell show as well. Yeah. And that was on Saturday afternoons for a while, and because they'd alternate, they would alternate the A-Team, Airwolf, and then when both of those were off the air, they'd usually drop some older show in there, slightly older, because Greatest American Hero ran from like 1980 to about 84.
Because I don't think I ever saw The Greatest American Hero. But I remember Automan.
Yeah, that was a weekday evening one. Automan and Manimal and Street Hawk, they were all weekday ones.
Yeah.
But they were all very short-lived shows, so they were ones where... And a lot of the time, these shows would do really well in England, but then still get cancelled. Tales of the Gold Monkey, the Donald Belisario Indiana Jones knockoff, was one of those. It was run, but when I was at school, every kid was into it, and then it just vanished. And I got to tell Donald Belisario about this, and he just didn't look remotely interested. So thank you.
But did he have a big cigar?
Yeah, probably, yeah. But with Hardcastle and McCormick, it's the idea of that was that you've got this retired hard-ass Milton Hardcastle, and he takes in this ex-con who works for him and helps him solve cold cases, but like all of these shows, the true stars of the show are the cars. And in this one, he's got the Coyote. Do you remember that? The little kind of orange kit car thing. And that's kind of why you watch the show. Although the lead actors do have really, really good chemistry as well. But that's a fun show. So I've just been having a lot of fun. And I'm not going to watch all of these shows. Well, I'm sort of dipping in, watching 2 or 3 episodes, getting my nostalgia fix, and then moving on to the next one. But it's tricky because sometimes the pilot episodes of these shows often they're 90 minutes, which seems crazy. And often they're not indicative of what the show actually is. Often there'll be slightly different casting. They won't have the theme song in place. $6 Million Man, it's not until about the 3rd or 4th episode that you've got the bionic sound.
It's surprising just how difficult it is to find some of these shows. Like, legitimately on a streaming service or YouTube isn't bad for some things.
Yeah, but it's just horrible quality, isn't it?
Because I wanted to watch the Buck Rogers TV show recently, and I could only find the film.
Yeah. I mean, they are out there if you're, on the deep, dark corners of the internet. But you're right. I mean, and I think it's because streaming services, they favour newer content. Like somebody did some infographical thing about the proportion of films that are on Netflix that were made before 1997, and it's like sort of 0.01% of their content or something, and that's why things like Tubi and Mubi and all of the Ubis are doing well.
Yeah, I'm on Mubi all the time.
Yeah, so there's some good stuff on those, but really, I mean, ultimately, you need to either buy these things off iTunes or torrent them. You know, that's how you do it. And with torrenting, sometimes it can be a challenge to find them. But no, what else you been watching, Paul?
I watched the third season of Star Wars Visions,
Oh yes.
which is the sort of animated. What's the word?
It's an anthology show, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an anthology show. There's like, I think there was 9 or 10 episodes in the third season. They were all excellent.
Hmm.
Two standouts for me was the first episode, the dual payback, just because it had some absolutely stunning artwork in
I've
it.
not seen a single one of these.
Quite minimalist artwork, but with a real bright flash of neon for the sabers, which just worked beautifully. And I'm trying to see if I can pull up the name of it. The fourth episode was called The Bounty Hunter, and that was really, really good as well. But they're all, for anyone who's a fan of Star Wars, these don't tend to concentrate on, known characters and whatnot. It's all just sort of little vignettes from all corners of the galaxy. But just really interesting. And yeah, I highly recommend Star Wars Visions. I'll jump through a couple of these myself now. And I watched the Resurrection of the Daleks, which was Peter Davison. I'd forgotten how good Peter Davison was
He's
as
my Doctor Who. The only time I was ever kind of into Doctor Who when it was on was Peter Davidson, because I remember Tom Baker, but I was a little bit too young, and I remember watching Castrovalva, which is the first Peter Davidson storyline, and being really into it. And I also remember, this may sound weird coming from me, I like Peter Davidson as well because I was really into cricket. I played cricket at school at the time,
Oh, and that was his outfit,
and
wasn't it?
cricket was his thing, you know. And I always
Yeah.
remember those. And I also, like I've told you before, I got a TARDIS, Peter Davidson TARDIS Easter egg. And I was so young and stupid that I thought it would be like the real TARDIS, and I could like open the TARDIS and like put my arm in it, and it would like disappear. It would actually really be bigger on the inside. And I remember being really disappointed. I opened it up, and there was like they tried to make it look like it was. There was like this sort of mirrored cardboard to create the illusion, but no.
I'm starting to question whether you should have been allowed to procreate. Hearing some of these stories.
I'm just amazed I didn't, choke on the chocolate of the.
We're not talking about the procreation now.
I'd eaten the foil. But anyway, sorry, go on.
But yeah, Peter Davison is really good in this. And it's got what really weirded me out was that I mean, Davros shows up in almost every Dalek story. He's as hard to get rid of as they are. But his kind of right hand man in this episode was oh God, I can't think of the actor's name. He played Dirty Den in EastEnders.
Oh, Leslie Grantham.
Leslie Grantham, yeah. It just made me chuckle because he was like a pawn of the master of the Daleks.
I'll tell you what, I've got a Leslie Grantham story. Do you remember when he had like a internet sex scandal? He was like, he was doing webcam stuff with some woman, and she took loads of screenshots and sold them to the Sun. And I remember I was at a convention in Milton Keynes at a shopping centre, like not really a sci-fi convention, but just a pop culture convention. And he was there. And I remember I was walking through the mall with my friend Adrian, and he walked past, and some bloke just shouted, "Oi, Den, put it away, mate!" And they carried on walking. And I just thought, oh, that's going to haunt him for the rest of his life now, isn't it?
Classic British humour.
Yes. But anyway, yes, sorry. He was there. Well, he was a pawn of the Daleks then, wasn't he? I guess, didn't he? So,
Hey. So yeah, this is a really good episode. The only thing that I never really liked the ginger-haired. I think his name was Turlo.
Oh, I can't remember.
He was one of the alien companions.
Oh yeah.
That ended up traveling with them. He was just a bit weird, the actor. He was very intense for Doctor Who. But Peter Davison was excellent, and the Resurrection of the Daleks is a really good story as well.
The one thing I always remember about the Peter Davidson Doctor Who episodes is one episode where he's floating in space outside a spaceship and he needs to get somewhere and he throws his cricket ball and it bounces off and hits him and sends him floating through space. In my mind, my memory of that is, because I was very young, is that it was this incredible, beautiful special effects sequence and that it really captured my imagination. I have fought the urge to go back and rewatch that now because I suspect that I might
You're
be
going to be
misremembering
confronted by the vision of Peter Davison dangling off a rope
with a black sheet. So I'm going to leave that in the mind's eye, I think.
But I also very much like Janet Fielding, who plays Tegan.
Yes.
And she was really good. And I also watched Remembrance of the Daleks, which was these two I watched in their sort of movie form. They were kind of, because they always did that with the 5 and 6 part of Doctor Who's. They'd release them as like a 2 hour or an hour. And 40
okay.
minutes.
What was it? Was that they'd re-show them on TV or release them on video?
Yeah,
home video,
I think
or...
so, because these were definitely edited as if they were one. There weren't any breaks in between or anything. It just flowed like it was a movie. And I very much like Sylvester McCoy as Doctor Who.
Yeah, I never really watched him, but I've heard a few people say that he was a bit of an underrated one. The production values weren't good, but he was good.
It always feels to me like he's the Doctor that Matt Smith most channeled.
Yes.
Because he's kind of like, he's a bit of a trickster, Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, a bit of a joker.
Yeah, he's got a kind of Loki kind of vibe to him.
Yeah, and he's always sort of doing silly things to kind of get people's attention away from what he's actually doing, things like that. But this is a really good story as well. So both of those would be highly recommended. But yeah, Peter Davison. I hadn't watched any Peter Davison Doctor Who's for quite a while, and he's really, really good.
Nice. I've been watching Maul Shadow Lord, the new Star Wars animated show on Disney
I've watched
Plus.
the first 2 of those.
And I'm enjoying this. What I actually did was I realised that I could barely remember because this is a co-created by Dave Filoni. It's very much in that Clone Wars style, but they have added that kind of Spider-Verse paintbrush flourish over the top of it a little bit, particularly in the backgrounds. It's a slightly different, quite subtly, but slightly different artistic style. This is an interesting one because Darth Maul, obviously his character got seemingly killed in The Phantom Menace, but he got brought back in the animated shows, the other Filoni shows, so, Clone Wars and Rebels. So I did that thing I just went on to ChatGPT and was like, tell me which episodes of Clone Wars and Rebels to watch or rewatch prior to watching the new Darth Maul series. So I did that. I sat down and I watched them and really enjoyed them because those shows, Rebels and Clone Wars, were, they were wildly inconsistent, but when they were good, they were really good. So, I mean, they are probably the poster children for picking and choosing episodes to watch shows, I mean, I literally remember there was one story arc where, we were introduced to the Night Sisters, these Sith witches, and they resurrected this, Darth Maul's brother and gave him all these powers, and it was incredible. It was like epic 3-parter that would have been an amazing film. And then the next week's episode was a storyline about a villainous company poisoning fizzy pop drinks. I mean, that was from the sort of sublime to the ridiculous.
Doesn't really do that justice.
Yeah, exactly. So I went back and I rewatched them all episodes. So I actually went into this with a really clear idea of the backstory. I enjoyed this. What's really funny, I've watched all 4 episodes now, is that it's Batman. You've got Commissioner Gordon. You've got this cop character who's Commissioner Gordon. You've got Maul, who is kind of, my enemy's enemy is my friend kind of thing. You've got a character who's kind of like Robin. You've got this environment that's very clearly meant to be Gotham City, and you've got the police force, the Gotham PD as well. So basically what they're doing is they're doing Batman in the Star Wars universe. The main difference being is that the Batman character, in this case Maul, is more on the villainous side of the anti-hero side of things than Batman really
Well,
is predominantly.
in Rebels, he was like a kingpin, wasn't he?
Yeah, so what happened was he was kind of double crossed and he became a crime lord, and then he got involved in like the whole Mandalorian civil war thing, and like there was a coup and he took over and he was beaten by Bo Katan, who's the Katie Sackhoff character. And it's a whole thing, and it's really worth watching. Is if you do a search online for Maul, Savage Press, Clone Wars, Rebels arc, and you push over those episodes together, you've basically got a really good 3-hour Star Wars story that works really well. And the final 3 episodes are awesome because they were the final 3 episodes of the Clone Wars, so it's running parallel to Revenge of the Sith. It's a bit like Back to the Future too. They're kind of walking past, rooms where the major events of the films are happening, kind of thing. But I've been really enjoying it. I wasn't sure about it at first, but I like the idea that it's a smaller storyline. It's not planet hopping. It's set in one place, and it's a bit like Andor in the way that. And this is going to sound a weird thing to say for an animated show, but it's one of the most grounded. You've got schlubby characters who are just kind of trying to survive and have jobs and problems with their relationships. And
is it still Sam? What's his name?
Sam Witwer, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a producer on the show as well. He kind of owns that character.
He's very good
in a lot of ways.
Very good.
I do think a little bit like it's got a bit of the problem that a lot of the Filoni shows have, where I think that if you've not watched the prior material, you'll be able to follow it, but I think you'll get this nagging feeling that you're kind of not quite getting
Missing
everything.
something.
Yeah, a bit like Ahsoka,
I say I've only seen the first 2 episodes, but I think you're definitely right. If you haven't seen any of the stuff like outside of the movies,
well, first of all you'll be like, why is he not dead?
Why is he? How come he's got legs?
Yeah, and then they'll be talking about like all of his days in the crime syndicate and these revenge for these things that happen that you haven't seen. And I think Star Wars does have a bit of a problem with that sometimes. And I think I like Dave Filoni, but I think that's a real Dave Filoni problem. I think Ahsoka had a really high cost of entry for new fans. And I think it can be done. Again, I know I always keep going on about it, but season 3 of Star Trek Picard, I think, is a great example of that, of how you kind of honor and reference the past, but whilst making something contemporary and that works on its own rights. It can be done. And whenever I hear people kind of use excuses, like I'll never forget when people were complaining about The Last Jedi. So people were complaining about The Force Awakens and why isn't Luke in it more? And J.J. Abrams went, well, we wanted to have Luke in it from the beginning and have him and Han and Leia being more of a storyline. But the problem is, as soon as we wanted to make the new characters stand on their own. And as soon as you bring in these legacy characters, they just take over. And it's like, well, do it better. I know it's hard, and I know it's difficult writing characters that are as compelling, but you're getting really well paid, and you're meant to be the best at this, so do it. Don't just run away from it. And I think that Star Wars has a bit of a problem with that sometimes, where they'll be like, oh, well, it's difficult to make something that's going to appeal to everyone, so we're going to make this just for the fans. It's like, no, you can do it. It's just really difficult to do. But I've been really enjoying this. I like the look of it. I like the art style. I like the setting. But I do think you need to already be kind of drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. And I think at the very least, there's probably some good 30-minute YouTube video made by some helpful soul that's designed to help you go into this. So
I did think it looked quite nice, though. I thought the animation's very nice. It's like seemed to be a step up from Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah.
Obviously, they were older shows and the text moved on, but it is a nice looking show as well.
Yeah. Cool.
And for once, I could hear what everybody was saying. I've had a real problem with modern stuff lately. And the sound mix seems to be always off. Like all the characters are mumbling, but sound effects are really loud. And I've just noticed it with a lot of films and TV.
It all started
getting old.
It all started with Bane in The Dark Knight Returns, or The Dark Knight Rises. Sorry, didn't it? It was just like we got used to that. Okay, one more thing from you.
Somebody told me it's because actors now have personal mics rather than one microphone for all,
and it's this idea of
tend to be able to talk in to perform in whatever volume they want, and the mic should be able to pick it up. But it's this
idea that everything has to be realistic. Everything has to be. In the real world, you don't hear everything. It's like, yeah, but this isn't the real world. You know, it's
In
the
the
same
real
reason.
world, I'm not trying to follow along with the story.
It's the same reason that people don't light night scenes anymore, and you can't see what. Every time I'll be with Hannah and we'll be watching a film from the 90s, we'll be like, it's so nice to be able to see what's happening. I mean, it's dark enough that you know it's supposed to be night, but it's a movie. It's not real life. You know, if it's real life, you wouldn't have.
You can make the imaginative jump, can't you? That it's
Well,
dark.
it's like when people are like, well, you know, you can't really hear things like that in real life. It's like, yeah, in real life, you don't have edits or cuts either. So, well, is everything going to be just one shot? Then it's like, I don't know. It's just, yeah. I think it's a fashion thing, and I think it will pass. And I think that there will be a time when people will look back and go, "Oh, do you remember the 2010s and the 2020s when you couldn't see or hear anything? That was a thing, wasn't it?" All right. One more thing from you, Paul.
Okay, I watched Osiris
Okay.
from 2025, I think. Yeah, 2025. And this is a action sci-fi movie starring Max Martini and Linda Hamilton.
Oh,
This was quite a weird one because it's kind of like a straight to streaming, straight to DVD style of movie, but it just felt like it had more spent on it than that. And it's such a weird one because the opening, I mean, much like, do you remember the dinosaur army men movie I was talking about not long ago?
yes.
And that one looked like it had a bit more spent on it, like the war scenes before even any of the dinosaurs looked
I
really
guess
good.
maybe just affordable effects about what you bang for. There's more bang for buck now.
Yeah, maybe. But this basically opens up and they're like it's your typical special forces guys working their way through a village in some kind of Middle Eastern looking place with different insurgents popping out and
Bloody
then sort of
insurgents.
taking them out as they go. Um, and they kind of get to a point where they're getting overwhelmed. There's too many bad guys, and they're starting to lose people. And then this crazy sort of red light hits the whole road that they're on, and suddenly they're all abducted
Oh
by
wow,
aliens.
as you do.
And the next they wake up, and it's like, well, they don't find out till later, but I think they said it was like 50 years later or something like that, and they've been cryogenically frozen, and they're being taken somewhere, and they basically these special forces guys bump into Linda Hamill's character, who's playing like this sort of ex KGB special forces person herself, who's been hiding on this ginormous alien spaceship for about 30 years. She woke up, and the film is basically about them trying to escape, and then kind of realizing that they can't escape, and then just trying to cause as much chaos as possible for these things that have taken them,
Oh,
because they've
cool.
basically been taken for food. They've been accidentally woke up from the deep freeze, basically. But it's a surprisingly nice looking film. The aliens are suitably creepy. They're kind of like it's kind of like a sort of halfway house between Alien and Predator.
Nice. Predalien, if you will.
A Predalien, yes. Or not an alienator.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite. I mean, it's quite a sort of violent movie, but entertaining. A decent cast. I always like Max Martini. He's always great in TV shows, and Michael Irby's in it as well. He's good too. And Linda Hamilton was great in it as well. It was just a real entertaining sort of action horror, I suppose you could call it.
How
But
long
I
is
was
it? Just
just
out of
kind of
curiosity. What's the runtime on that thing?
hour and 40, I think.
Okay, that'll do.
Well, yeah, an hour and 40, hour and 45.
Okay. Oh, they're pushing it a little bit, but that's just on the right side. Just on the right side.
And I mean, I just thought it was solid, and it has a really nice look to it. It's lit nicely. It was just interestingly shot. The special effects were decent. Um, and just a fun turn your brain off action sci-fi movie.
Nice. Well, I'll probably watch that when I've finished watching season 1 of Logan's Run. I love the fact that I've still not watched The Wire or The Sopranos, but I'm working my way through a failed science fiction series from 1976.
No, I think you've. The problem is, I've seen The Wire and The Sopranos, and I don't think I could watch them again.
Yeah.
I think that some shows, their impact is lost the second time around.
I think one of the things I enjoy about going and watching some of these early 70s shows is just how crazy they are, because, you know, nobody worried about being cool back then. It was just, you just did it. And I think that there's a wildness to them that's similar to what you get in like exploitation cinema. You know, obviously the content isn't as aggressive or as transgressive, but there's a, wow, you don't see that every day, you know, element to it.
A lot of them had that sort of Smokey and the Bandit. It's a load of mates out filming and having fun. I mean, the fun they're having comes over, and I think that modern actors are very much more serious and
image conscious
than that nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that part of the reason that those shows were so enjoyable as a kid and that reconnect you, you know, that's where the nostalgia comes from to being a kid, is there's a lot of child logic. It's like I've been watching the original Doctor Who, and one of the things I think really resonated about that show is so much of the logic of the show and the way it's performed feels like child logic. Like, you know, when you're a kid and you're playing and you're like, right, and then we'll do this and then you do that and then this will happen and that. It feels like it's got that kind of energy to it, which means it's easy to replicate it on the playground, you know, and, you know, find a stick that looks like a gun and jump as a goalpost, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I think that a lot of that now, if you look at things like Marvel, which is the kind of modern equivalent of that, there's humor in those sort of things, but they are still very conservative in tone. And I think that makes it hard for kids to pretend to be it, because it just all looks so good. But anyway, I'm out of time. Quick reminder that we appreciate feedback. Chinstroker versus Punter@gmail.com. Or sometimes we just leave comments here on the channel. But for now, that is us, and we are back, and we will see you very soon, hopefully.
Bye.